Welcome, everybody back to the show. Another fantastic guest. We keep them coming, as you know we do. This one is a hometown kid. Quick, brief intro, but some big accolades. Some of them I didn't even know. 11-year Major League Baseball player, the 2012 American League Wilson Defensive Player of the Year, 2013 National League Wilson Defensive Player of the Year. Back in high school, I didn't know this one. This is freaking phenomenal. USA Today High School Baseball Player of the Year and a 2001 state champion at Tampa Catholic. Everybody, welcome to the show, Mr. Denard Span. Span, welcome, my man. Talk to me.
Man, what's going on, P Rock? Can I call you P Rock
Yeah,
today?
of course.
I I don't know if your followers know you as P Rock.
Hey, what's funny? I'm doing my homework on you. I'm looking down the Wikipedia. I'm looking at the nicknames. I'm looking. I said
Yeah,
that ain't none of them is it? We know Spider Man. That's
Spider Man. Yes, sir. See, a lot of people don't remember me from the football field, man.
I
And
know, bro.
whenever I'm having conversations with people, they don't realize, at Hillsborough, I was more known for football
Right.
than baseball. I didn't
And
baseball didn't turn that corner until later on in my high school career.
but you know what's crazy is that's understandable, especially at Hillsborough, because we were a football school and we were
Yes, sir.
fantastic with baseball, but we were a football school.
Yes, sir.
And you came on the scene, your freshman and sophomore year and made a huge impact as a sophomore.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
when that name was that well deserved and folks won't know, we called you Spider Man for the catches you used to make, not in the game,
Yeah,
but in practices.
yeah,
So all
yeah,
the stuff that you used to make in the game, like we said, we seen that already. We saw
yeah,
it already. We see
yeah,
it in practice all the time.
yeah. And you know what? And that was a big deal for me. You know what I'm saying? Being an underclassman, a young cat, and impressing, guys like you and J.R. Reed and Shannon
Mm-hmm.
Snell and all the big dogs, if you will. And to have a
Mm-hmm.
nickname like that, that was a
Oh
big
yeah.
deal. That was
Oh
like
yeah.
a sign of that was a sign of respect. You know what I'm saying? From the older
Yep.
guys, like we see you, young fella.
Yep.
We know you gonna be able to take the keys to this program once we leave. And so yeah, that meant everything to me, man.
Do you think your football career helped your baseball career or vice versa?
I think my football career definitely helped me on the baseball field. Playing basketball as well.
Mm-hmm.
For me, football, you have to have a certain mentality, a certain mindset to compete. It's more of an aggressive sport. You got to
Right.
have confidence. You got to know, you're that guy. That's how you got to feel. And so, for me, transferring that over to baseball, whereas honestly, it's the exact very opposite because of how much you fail in the game of baseball, and it's a
Right.
game of humility. But just taking the mindset from a football player onto the baseball field, I feel like that gave me like the ultimate advantage as far as just the way I hustled, the way just the way I went about playing the game of baseball for sure.
Well, and people may not know how good you are on the basketball court. Also, you and your brother, I grew up a fan of your brother. Played behind Ray, and then played alongside of Ray as I got older. And then seeing you come behind him and how good you guys were and how those skill sets just transferred over from one sibling to the other. People don't know you were a three-sport athlete.
Yeah.
Um, do you advise kids these days to make sure they play multiple sports, or are you a specialized guy?
I'm definitely not a specialized guy. It's the landscape of youth sports have changed
Mm,
dramatically from when we were kids up until now. When we were kids, it was about seasons. It was
yep.
about in the fall you played football, in the winter you played basketball, and then in
Yep.
the summer or spring summer you played baseball. And so I'm still a firm believer of that. I know it gets more and more difficult the older you get because these kids, there's a lot of kids that are specializing with travel baseball or even playing football year round. In Florida, you can play all the sports year round. And I
Hmm.
think these travel, organizations, they make parents and kids feel like unless you play this sport year round, you're going to fall behind. But
Hmm.
I'm going through the process now. My kids are, young, 7 years old, 5 years old, and 2 years old. So we're starting to get to the age where travel ball teams are starting to contact me, but I'm going to try to keep my kids in multiple sports for as long as possible.
Speaking, I want to go back. You talking about your kids? I want to go back to when you were a kid. Just tell
Yeah.
me, and your brother, you and your bro are pretty relatively close in age. How much of an impact did he have on you coming up?
Yeah, he had a huge impact, man. He's 4 years, older than me. I grew up in a single mother household, so in a lot of ways, he not only was my older brother, but he was like a father figure to me. I always looked
Right.
up to him. He was my idol. I wanted to, talk like him, dress like him,
Mm-hmm.
walk like him.
Mm-hmm.
Everything he did,
Mm-hmm.
I paid attention to. And,
Mm-hmm.
he paved the way. You know what I'm saying? Like he showed me, what it looked like to be great and to be a competitor and all the guys that he competed alongside like yourself, your cousin Marco and Big
Mm-hmm.
Drew. The list goes on. You know what I mean. As far as me getting a front row seat of
Mm-hmm.
what it looks like to be great or to be competitive. And so for
Yep.
me, being 4 years younger, I'm sitting there on the sideline. I remember like it was yesterday. You coming in as a freshman. I think I was seventh grade, but watching
Mm-hmm.
you come onto the scene and make an impact, and for me, it's like I'm just sitting there taking notes. I've always been a visual learner.
Right.
You know what I
Right.
mean? And once I see it, now I know I need to go back to the drawing board, or now I know what I need to do in order to be ready to make that same impact when it's my time. For me, it was like I was 4 years younger, and I was like, it's not my time yet, but it's gonna be
Right.
my time. And I'm watching Ray do it. But I'm like, when it's my time, I'm gonna do a little bit better than him. You know what I'm saying?
And
That was
Ray
just the competitive, nature.
and Ray was the man. And
Yeah,
take me back here. So
yeah,
you come, and I like to talk about Hillsborough because most people don't see Hillsborough in the same light anymore because all these other schools and kids are transferring here and there, and they're
yeah,
peeling away the talent from the inner city because of gentrification. However, when we were in school, Hillsborough was the school, right?
yeah,
So
yeah. Most definitely.
take me back to like your first couple of days as a ninth grader at Hillsborough.
Oh
What
man,
was
it
the
was
impression? Like, where did your mind go? Like, yo, this is crazy. Like, talk to me.
culture shock. Culture
Yeah.
shock for sure. I grew up in the suburbs. I've been around, inner city folks and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But just seeing, just the competitiveness and the talent, all in one school and coming in, like you said, and seeing, Coach Garcia, the way he ran the football program
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, I'm a ninth grade, I'm 140 pounds and I'm looking at, all these guys on the varsity team looking like grown men. I'm like, I don't, I thought I was ready, but I ain't ready yet. You know what I'm saying? But once again, like, I've always been a visual guy. Just give me a
Right.
chance and give me an opportunity. And, I'm going to show you, I don't have the size, but I got the heart. And so for me, it definitely was like, whoa, this is different. You know what I'm saying? This is different coming into high school. Now you at the bottom of the totem pole, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just about learning and trying to mirror yourself out after the great ones and the guys that were older than me.
So take me through your Hillsborough High School baseball experience. Okay. So just take me down memory lane. Did you play
Yeah.
baseball for the Terriers freshman year also?
Yeah, I did, and it's a funny
Okay.
story because me and my mom always, talk about this. So I played JV sports all my entire ninth grade year,
Mm-hmm.
and so I remember, ninth grade football had just ended, and they had already had baseball tryouts. I didn't even get a chance to try out, and of course, as a freshman, nobody knows who I am. They don't know if I
Mm-hmm.
can play, how good of an athlete I am, and so.
Mm-hmm.
The JV team, believe it or not, did not, practice or play their games at Hillsborough.
Okay.
They played their games at Town and Country Little League. And
Okay.
so I remember, my mom dropped me off there, and we got out there, and the coach was like, "We don't have no more spots for him. We already got our team. We had tryouts 2 weeks ago." And
Mm-hmm.
my mom, being the woman she is, she don't take no for an answer. She like, no, no, no. You need to, give him a look. You don't. This might be a mistake if you don't give him a chance. And
Uh-huh.
so after she got done, kind of, convincing him to give me an opportunity, the center fielder that day, for whatever reason, didn't show up that day. And so he was like,
Perfect.
"What position you play?" And I said center field. He said, "All right, get out there." And so long story short, I end up, having a good practice, going out there, making a few diving catches. I'm stealing
Mm-hmm.
bases, just making an impact. And so I'm walking off the field. The practice is over, and he came to my mom. He's like, "Is he coming tomorrow?" And so, yeah. So that was So I guess that was the tryout. But that was how I made the JV team. And then the following year, as a 10th grader, I was on varsity. Made the varsity team, but I honestly I didn't play a lot. We had guys like Warren Davis, who was a senior who got drafted by the Toronto Blue Jays, and Coach Early, he liked to play, his seniors. He gave love and respect to those guys. Tommy Baker, God bless his soul, he was another guy who played in front of me. But honestly, I'm talking about me being a visual guy. I saw Warren Davis. Like I had no idea that you could get drafted out of high school until I played alongside of him and saw him go through the process. So he was the first guy that I saw, go through the baseball process. And at that time, he was way better than me, 2 years older than me. But in my mind, I'm like, in 2 years, I'm gonna be, I want to be better than this guy, or I want to look something like how he looks.
Right.
And so, 10th grade, I played sparingly towards the end of the season. I started getting opportunities. But I rode the bench majority of my 10th grade year.
Okay, so 10th grade, you rode the bench majority of your 10th grade year. That would have been the spring of 10th grade.
All correct.
Right? Okay. So
but
now,
I was a starter on the football team my 10th grade
yes,
year.
You were.
As a wide receiver. I came in my first year on varsity and started there. So go ahead.
And then, the boys never let me live this story down. We had practice. I don't let nobody catch the ball on my side ever. And I think we had a scrimmage.
Yeah.
And you ran a 9 right on the sideline, and made one of them damn Spider-Man catches on the sideline. And
I had to get you back, man, because you was always jamming us at the line. P-Rock, he used to jam us all.
And the whole practice came to celebrate it with you after you made that catch, right?
And so Coach Reed was acting a fool.
All right, let me get back on track. All right, so now when did you start thinking about leaving Hillsborough and transferring out to another school? When did that conversation start happening within the household?
Okay, so like I said, watching my older brother, watching the generation before me, come. I knew that your junior year, that was like your most important year to put up numbers and to get interest from D1 schools.
Okay.
So 10th grade, I came in, I was happy to be a starter. I made some plays. I feel like I had proved myself to Coach G, to whoever. If they throw that ball up 9.5 times out of 10, I'm going to come down with it. You feel me? As a 10th grader. Yep. So now coming into my junior year, I'm like, it's time to really get off. As a 10th grader, I didn't get a ton of opportunities, but once again, when they threw it to me, I came down with it. So now as a junior, I'm like, this is the year. Right. I have to put up some numbers here. You know what I'm saying? Because I want to play Division I football. That's my ultimate goal. Obviously, I want to win a state championship, but ultimately, I want to move on and do that. And so, long story short, that didn't happen. Okay. After my 11th grade year, honestly, it felt like after my 10th grade year where I was only getting 3 to 5 targets a game. You know what I mean? And I was, doing something with those targets. It wasn't like I was dropping the ball. I was actually completing those targets and averaging a touchdown out of those 3 to 5 targets. And, I'm not, and you've been, I'm not a big guy. You know what I'm saying? I'm 5'11", 165 pounds. So I knew that I had to put up numbers in order to, get the attention of D1 schools. And so after my junior year, we didn't win the state championship. It'd be one thing if we would actually won the state championship. In my mind, I felt like the missing element to our team was we didn't throw the ball enough. Right. In Tampa, we would run through the competition here in Hillsborough, Pinellas County. But when you get in the playoffs, you playing Lakeland, you playing, Miami and Fort Lauderdale. You got to have a balanced attack. we didn't throw the ball, you know what I mean? And so we got knocked out of playoffs. So I'm upset that we didn't win the championship or get to states, but also, too, I didn't even get the opportunities.
Right.
So now here I am, feeling like my junior year, one of my most important years just went down the drain. I put in the work, et cetera, et cetera. And so now in my mind, I'm like, I got one more year left of high school. You know what I mean? I've been at Hillsborough for 2 years, and I've listened to, Coach Reed and Coach G tell me, oh, we're going to get you the ball. We're going to get you the ball. And for me, I lost faith in that, knowing that I only got one more year left. I can't, there can't be no more redos. It's not going to be another year after my senior year. So for me, it was like, we have to make a change. I have to make a change, and I ended up making that change right after the Christmas holidays. And enrolled right into TC, just so that I could be there for spring practice and kind of get acclimated to the new school. But another thing, people don't realize that I left Hillsborough for football.
Right.
TC at that time, their program was not what it was, when I was in middle school, when they had Kenny Kelly and Daryl Jackson and Quincy Hips. But I grew up watching it because Ray went to TC for a year as well. So I knew,
Right.
About that was the connection there because Ray had went there, 4 years prior. But at that time, they were in between football coaches and stuff like that. But, for me, it was like, you know what? Even though they're not a good team right now, I know I'm going to have the rock in my hand. And I just need opportunities. I need chances. And so that was the decision that, me and my mom, we made. I went to her and she knows me enough to when I come to her and say something like that, I ain't just, what I'm saying, just trying to make a irrational move or decision. And I'm thankful for her for making it happen.
So that's interesting because I did not know. This is a good piece of information. I did not know that your mindset was so strongly on football, being such a diverse athlete like you were, so good on the basketball court. Obviously, talent. We know that up close and personal how good you were at
Yeah.
football. But baseball, the way your career kind of took off from TC, I had always thought that you left Hillsborough to pursue a baseball career because you weren't getting opportunities on the baseball diamond. So I'm
But
incorrect there.
yeah, well, you got to think about it. Like I as a sophomore didn't play
Yeah.
at
Okay.
Hillsborough, right, baseball wise.
Right.
But at Hillsborough, I had started sophomore and junior year. So in my mind, football is number one because I've shown that I'm good enough to play and start on one of the best programs in all of Tampa. So in my mind, I'm like, I'm a football player right now.
Okay.
I always knew, obviously I had the ability to be a good baseball player, but at that time, my focus was on wanting to sign a Division I, major big time scholarship.
When did the shift happen while at TC? Like, when did you know, this baseball thing could take off?
Right away. I got over to TC and I was a starting right fielder. We had a guy who was a year ahead of me. He was a senior going to Clemson. But that year I started out in right field and I think the first game of the season I might have had 2 home runs and it just seemed like things were coming together, things were clicking. It did seem like they appreciated me more over there and it gave me more opportunity. But yeah, just that whole season, it was a magical season. We ended up, going to the state championship. We actually, I say this to people all the time, like talent wise, we were good, but we weren't great. You know what I mean? We gelled at the right time, around the playoffs and going into the state, districts and the regionals and all that stuff and went on a run. Ended up making the state tournament, and at the state tournament, you're playing against all the best players, the best teams in the state of Florida. So there were a ton of scouts there, and I ended up, playing really well during that tournament. And once again, I go back to you saying that your junior year is your most important year. That happened to be my junior year, where all of a sudden I'm starting to make some noise. And then that summer, after we won the state championship, that summer, I started getting, a lot of phone calls from people, inviting me to all these different workouts and showcases and stuff like that. And I ended up that summer, going to those workouts, going to those showcases, and by the end of the summer, when I came home, I played well. By the time I came home, when that summer was over, I was I think number 9 or 10 best player in the country. Before that summer started, I don't think anybody really knew who I was. And,
Bro,
because I went up there and like I said, I'm a visual guy. Like I had been reading about these top players in the world, and I went to this USA trial that they had, and I've been reading about these top guys. You know what I mean?
mm-hmm.
BJ Uptons and Scott Cashmere's and Jeff Francoeur, all these guys that end up playing, having long careers alongside of me. Later on, obviously. But when I got there, that Tampa came out of me like, man, these boys, they I don't see these boys. You know what I mean?
Right.
They're talented, but I can do that. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And I went out there and performed, and then once that summer ended, it was evident. Everything flip flopped. I went from being football first, and now it's baseball. Now I'm a baseball player, and now I almost didn't play football my senior year. I still played, but it became, all right, I got to protect myself for baseball now, because it was like, God had, showed me that, this is going to be your path.
I got kind of like the same story with basketball.
I remember you when you first came in, you was basketball first. I remember that. I remember that.
I remember Ray was playing in front of me. Ray was playing in front of me. And then I finally got I got to start next to Ray when coach started putting that two guard offense in. So Ray was kind of doing it as a freshman. Sophomore year, I was really good. But then junior year, because after my sophomore year on the football field is when I started getting that football attention.
Yeah.
And things started smelling a little different.
Yeah.
And I was like, yo, they really talking good with this football stuff. I ain't hearing nothing on the basketball court.
Yeah.
And then your mindset starts to shift and your priorities start to shift. You start putting a little more time into this football thing.
Correct.
And then I didn't play basketball my senior year because I was laser focused. I went all the time. Yeah, on football. I was laser focused, bro. But let me go back to you. So now, and obviously to your credit, when I'm at school, I'm at Notre Dame, you're winning state titles at TC, and obviously we're keeping up what's going back at home. And they're like, yo, Span balling. I'm like, what? Basketball? Football? Like, nah, Span like the man over at TC with his baseball stuff. So now we're following your career and you're doing your thing. But before I get to that question, I need to throw myself off. You went to this USA trial, and you're going to have kids that are going to be coming up, hopefully, in the baseball space if they want to follow your footsteps. With all the different opportunities and all the different events that baseball folks say you have to be at, where do you stand, and what direction you think you're going to send your kids in as far as the recruitment and showcase opportunities? How do you think you're going to maneuver in that with your own kids?
Oh man, that's a tough question. Like I said before, honestly, I'm going to try my best to make sure they play other sports. I don't want them to feel, and I don't want to feel as if we need to be at every single tryout, every single showcase.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Because I don't know. I'm a firm believer that if you good, they're gonna find you. Mm-hmm. If you're an exceptional athlete. You know what I mean? That's the thing about baseball. Like, if you're like baseball, there's, pitchers, if you throw 90, 95 plus, they're going to find you. You know what I mean? If you can hit the ball a long way, they're going to find you. But what separated me from baseball is that I was an exceptional athlete. There's not many exceptional athletes that have the hand-eye coordination, that, you know what I'm saying, that know how to actually play the game of baseball. And so for me, it's like, I want to make sure my kids are first and foremost all-around athletes. Right. I feel like if they're all-around athletes, there's going to be a sport that notices them, similar to your experience and similar to my experience. But making sure that they're not getting burnt out and playing one sport. That's where my heart is to try to keep that strategy.
Now, had you not had that deep playoff run, do you think your career would have been similar? Because going back to what you said, you had a deep playoff run. Obviously, you ended up in the state finals.
Yeah.
and a lot of scouts are in that space. If you don't make it to that third, fourth, fifth round of the playoffs, do you get those looks?
Yeah, I mean, you can argue no. You can
Mm-hmm.
argue no, but I'm a firm believer that everything happens for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe my story would have been a little different. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Maybe I would have gotten noticed a year, a couple months later, or at a different event or something like that. But like I said, it just goes back to if you have that mindset, as far as being disciplined to your craft and being competitive and not taking a day off and being dominating where you are, the space that where you are. Before you know it, your name is going to get out. It's going to get it's going to get that recognition, and it's only going to be before long before the right people watch you and see you and your phone begin to start ringing off the hook.
So we fast forward, you're the 20th overall pick in the 2002 draft. All right, to the Twins. But tell me this story that I researched or I read up on. What is this pre-draft that could have
Yeah.
happened with the Rockies? What's that story?
Well, you did your research, huh?
Bro, I listen. If I don't look into you, I'm doing you a disservice. Hey,
You're right. You're right.
all my guests are going to be special guests. I got to see what's going
You're
on.
right. You're right. So okay. So yeah. So my junior year, I go through that. Now coming to my senior year, I'm top 10 in the nation as
Mm-hmm.
far as baseball players, and so going into my senior year, every practice, every game, where our baseball field, our stadium is flooded with scouts. And
Okay.
so, the Rockies, they were, I think they had the 11th or ninth pick. I think they had the ninth pick. But they were the one team that just consistently was all over me,
Okay.
contacting me, coming to the house. I think a month or two before the draft, they flew me and Ray. We went out there to Colorado, did a little workout, met the GM and stuff like that. So it was like they were making it very clear that they wanted to
Mm.
draft me. And so now fast forward to 48 hours before the draft. They called me and we were trying to work out a pre-draft contract deal. We were trying to come to terms on what the contract will look like.
Mm-hmm.
And because I was a dual sport athlete, because I played football as well, there
Right.
was I'm not sure if you played against guys. You remember a guy named Ricky Manning Jr.
It don't. It
Oh,
don't. It don't ring a
or,
bell.
or even Kenny Kelly. Kenny
Yeah.
Kelly. You
Yeah.
know how
Kenny.
he
Yeah.
went.
Yeah.
You know how
Yep.
he went to Miami, but he signed
Yep.
a professional baseball scholarship, and
Yep.
so he was doing both. And so I think the way his contract was set up was when you're a dual sport athlete like that, because you're essentially a part time professional baseball player, they
Mm-hmm.
can divvy up the money, your signing bonus over a 4-year period or 5-year period, if that
Okay.
makes sense. Like, so if you sign for 3 million, they can divide that by 5, and every January 1st over the next 3-4 years, they give you three. I don't know the math. They give you $350,000, $400,000 until it equals up to whatever your what you agree to sign. That's
Okay.
a way for them to I guess have some financial flexibility to go and sign some other guys. That was just a rule back then. And so
Okay.
Colorado, they came at me, approached me on like a 5-year deal, but it was less than what that pick slot should have been. They were trying to get me on a little bit of a discount.
Right.
I mean, back then, the way the financials worked, it was I was a class of 2002. So I was the
Okay.
ninth pick. So my agent's job is just to look at what the ninth pick got the year before. The
Okay.
ninth pick got $2.5 million. Then because of inflation, it can't. It's got to be more than 2.5,
Okay.
right? And so, long story short, it wasn't above that. Let's just say $2.5 million. And then on top of that, they wanted to spread it out over 5 years. And so we didn't come to terms on it. So my agent was like, I don't think that's, we're not doing that. If you're going to sign, like, it's got to be fair. They want you. They got to show you they want you. And
Right.
so, yeah, so the deal fell through, and yeah, they didn't pick me, and then I fell all the way to the 20th pick. So
Mm.
yeah, it was yeah, yeah, that was stressful. You know what I mean? Because it's like I knew that the Rockies at the ninth pick wanted to sign me, but after that, I didn't I didn't know who there was a bunch of other teams that showed interest, but it was like I could fall to anybody, and I don't know. You know what I'm saying? You've seen you've seen on draft day anything can happen.
Anything can
Aaron
happen.
Rodgers. You know what I mean? And so yeah,
Yep.
but I was thankful, obviously, that the Twins, they picked me 9 picks later or 11 picks later.
Mm. As good of a player as you were, and all the baseball that I'm learning over the years, because we have some mutual friends who are deep in the baseball space, and we talk
Yeah,
baseball all the time. I never thought I'd talk
yeah.
baseball as much as I talk baseball now. Uh, but I'm always talking baseball. But baseball cats always got specialized coaches. You got a hitting coach, pitching coach, fielding coach. You got all kind of coaches with baseball, right? You never had a hitting coach.
No,
Is
no, we
that
couldn't
like
afford.
is that like an
I think
anomaly?
that's an anomaly. Yeah, I would say back then, and for sure today. Yeah,
Yeah.
I would say so. Yeah, yeah. I mean, we couldn't afford. I played with guys that were similar to me that you can't afford it. If you can't afford a hitting coach, then
Yep.
shucks, to pay the rent and food and everything else is more important. And the way my mom, the way she was, she just was like, "We gonna figure this out." If you after a
Right.
bad game. And Little League, we would go up to the batting cages, and she would have $5, and probably equate to 30 or 40 swings in the batting cage, and
Right.
I would have to swing it out and figure it out. And so I learned how to be my own hitting coach, and
Mm.
just relying on my really hand-eye coordination. And so
Mm-hmm.
I never had a hitting coach until I got in the Pro Bowl.
Do you think that socioeconomics and financial restraints prevent a lot of black kids from either starting playing baseball and or sticking with baseball as they get older?
I think that I think it's a factor. I think it's definitely a factor. Yeah, I mean, when you look at like the price of the equipment, you
Mm-hmm.
look at the price of all these travel ball organizations and tournaments, and these tournaments where like I said, like if you can't afford it, these are where the scouts are. You're
Right.
not able to attend these things. Like you almost have to be exceptional or extraordinary, to get that recognition. And it didn't used to be that way. Even when,
Mm-hmm.
you and I were, coming up in middle school, high school, it was like everybody played high school and the scouts
Mm-hmm.
came to your high school. And now it's almost gotten to the point where it's like travel ball and these showcases are more important than high
Yeah.
school ball. And so yeah, I think for sure that's a huge part of it. Yeah.
Explain the MLB development, that breakthrough series that you were involved in.
Yeah, man, it was a blast. Just being in an environment where it was, nothing but people that looked like me and you,
Mm-hmm.
playing the game of baseball. From our coaches, we had ex MLB guys that I grew up, watching, Marquise Grissom and just a lot of other players that were there, and pouring into, once again, kids that look like us and kids
Yep.
that just need that extra oomph, that extra, piece of information, that piece of knowledge, and the kids that are being overlooked. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, last year was my first time doing it, and it was it was a blast, and I plan on going back this summer and being a part of it. But that's what is needed. You know what I mean? Because this is giving these kids that opportunity to get access
Yep.
that a lot of kids from our community are not getting, and that opportunities that they're not getting. And so, for a lot of kids, you're seeing, kids that come out of this breakthrough series and this MLB develops, you're seeing these guys reach the major leagues now. You know what I mean? And so
Yeah.
it's definitely, a lot of value in this program that they have, Major League Baseball has put in.
You preached over and over again, preparation, preparation, preparation. When folks would interview you, they speak so highly about your athleticism. They speak so highly about your coordination. But you would always revert back to, you know what? Yeah, I was gifted there, but what really made me an 11-year pro and
Yeah.
a really good baseball player was I prepared for those
Yeah.
moments.
Yeah.
If you're talking to every youth baseball player, just give them that message right now. Talk to them about preparation, how important it is for every athlete.
Yeah, preparation, discipline. Having that be, your number one focus. That's the separator.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can speak on this. When you get to a certain level, like everybody for the most part is fast. Everybody is strong. Everybody, is an exceptional athlete. But it gets to a certain point, in your life where you got to make a decision. Like, is this what
Right.
I really want to do, or this is what do I really want to feed my family with this? And once you
Mm-hmm.
make that decision, then it's like, yeah, you can't take no day offs. From the moment you wake up to the moment you go to sleep, it has to revolve around how I can be a better, you fill in the blank. And this goes
Mm.
across from being a businessman to being a professional athlete. You know what I mean? Of being, disciplined, being diligent, when, knowing when it's time to cut off fun, if you will, and get your sleep, making sure you're eating properly, making sure, when you could slack on your workouts during the off season because nobody is there watching you. No, you can't do that. You have to put in that work more so when nobody's watching because sooner or later it's going to come out. You know what I'm saying? Like
Mm-hmm.
you can't cheat the game, you can't cheat the system. But I would say, I was an exceptional athlete,
Mm-hmm.
but baseball, I wasn't. I was not an exceptional baseball player. What took me over the hump was my exceptional athleticism, but then my exceptional work ethic and my exceptional preparation of saying to myself that no, you're not going to work harder than me. That was
Right.
like my superpower of during the off season, making sure that every second, every minute of the day, I'm squeezing the most out of it to help me once the season starts. So that once the season starts, that's where I get my mental edge. When I step in
Right.
that box and I'm facing whoever, I in my heart, in my mind, I feel as if he ain't worked harder than me.
Right.
I want it more than he do. So that's my edge. And as the season goes on, like people get tired and exhausted. That was when I hit my second, third gear. You know what I mean? It's like running that mile, you know what I mean, for
Mm-hmm.
conditioning. Everybody come out the blocks hot, and then all of a sudden they hit that wall. But
Yep.
for me, it was like when everybody's hitting that wall, that's when I'm catching my second and third breath, and I'm crossing that finish line.
Every professional athlete's gonna have they're gonna have the hills and they're gonna have the valleys. So I'm gonna give you this quick statement, and I want you to tell me where it takes you to. 3 surgeries in 9 months. Where does that take you?
It takes me to a rough space mentally.
Mm.
Um, because it stems from what we were just saying as far as preparation and hard work and being diligent, discipline. I had those things. Like I can, look myself in the mirror and know that I didn't cheat the game. And I
Mm-hmm.
had never really had any major injuries. And it was
Mm-hmm.
the timing of those injuries. It was right as I was about to become a free agent when I had those injuries. And so for me, it was like, me questioning God in a sense, like, why now? This could have
Right.
happened a year later. I'm about to cash in
Right.
on, all of the hard work that I put forth from the age of, 4 or 5 years old. And so, yeah, having those 3 surgeries, during my free agent year, that was, it was tough, man. It really was.
Mm.
But I look back on it and I'm thankful for it though,
Right.
because it it helped shape who I am today. I wouldn't be the person I am today if I didn't go through that. My life would have been down a different path. Sometimes God will, protect us and save us from ourselves, and He'll put us through certain things that we don't understand at that given moment.
Yep.
But He's really looking out for us in the long term, if you understand what I mean.
Well, let's get out that valley. Let's get back to one of these hills. With the Twins back in 2010, you had 3 triples in one game.
Yeah,
Driving in a triple at any age is a big deal. All right.
yeah,
take me through that scenario. You driving your first triple. You get back to the
Yeah,
dugout. Everybody's celebrating. Now it's time to
yeah,
get back up to the plate for your second at bat. Go ahead. Take me through
yeah.
that. Take me through that scene.
Yeah, so I get another triple, and so obviously I'm 2 for 2, and I'm thinking, yeah, I'm having a good day. I'm having a good
Uh
a good day at the plate,
huh.
and then I come up for my third at bat, and I think it was bases loaded, if I'm not
Oh,
mistaken, and I got I got all of this ball. I thought I hit a home run, so I'm rounding the bases thinking I hit a grand slam.
oh,
And so I
snap.
was, I was feeling myself, and then all of a
Yeah.
sudden the ball hit the top of the wall, and then ricocheted in the outfield,
Back in
and then
play. Yeah.
I had to hustle up, and I came around and got the third triple, but when I touched third base, I was pissed off because I wanted it to be a home run.
Right.
You feel me? And then all of a sudden the crowd was going crazy. And then I think I got back to the dugout, and then everybody was like, just talking about just the it being so rare to hit three triples in one game. And so
Yeah.
that's when it dawned on me, like, oh man, like I just did something that only a few people have ever done in a baseball game. But it started off by me at first. I was not happy that I had that third. I wasn't even thinking about it. I wanted the home run. But yeah, that was a fun day for sure.
Another really good defining moment. I mean, this was all over ESPN. I think we were in the club, man. One time we saw this play on ESPN. It's the game-saving catch in 2013 versus the
Yeah,
Giants. All right,
yeah.
who's at bat? Who
Hunter
hits it,
Pence.
and when? And who was at bat?
Hunter Pence.
All right, so Hunter hit Pence at bat. That swing comes, you hear that crack. Go, you're up. Now what?
And I go back to my football days now. I see that
Yeah,
ball. I gotta go get it. You talking about football, it making me a better athlete.
yeah,
My wide receiver skills, that those instincts, kicked in. That ball is in my vicinity. So I broke on the ball. I knew it was 2 outs. If this ball drops, they win the game. And
right.
and for me, it's there's something that sticks to me that Coach Reed used to always say to me. He said, "Big time players make big time
Big
plays."
time
He
plays. That's
said, "You
right.
want to be a big time player, then you
Yep,
make a play in the game. All this
yep,
practice stuff,
yep.
nobody care about that." He used to say that every Friday, and that still to this day stick to me. And so just having that mindset and big moments, big opportunities, and so yeah, I had to go out there and make a big time play for my team.
You played with some good teammates, some very notable players. I wrote down a few of them, but give me
Yeah.
your best. Give me your best Bryce Harper story.
Ooh man.
What kind of dude
um.
is he? What kind of dude is Bryce?
Well, I it's when I watch him now, he's so mature. He's
Okay.
he's older, obviously. He was a family man. He's married. When I played with him, many moons ago, I'm literally 9, 10 years older than him. So
Uh
I
huh.
think I was 30, or maybe 9, 8, 9 years older than him. But I was 30, 29, 30, and he was 21. So
Right.
he was a young kid, a
Right.
young boy, playing with grown men, if you
Mm-hmm.
will. And so at times he lacked, that maturity or that feel. But you kind of had to, give him grace because it's like, man,
Mm-hmm.
like what was I doing at 21? I was,
Right.
not making the best decisions. But just, that was from a maturation standpoint. But when he got on that field and he got up to that plate just to see how explosive he was with his hands and how he knew the strike zone and just the way he played the game. Even back then it was like this guy's going to be special. This guy is going to be a Hall of Famer. He just was one of the more clutch hitters that I got a chance to play with. I think I have a
Mm-hmm.
signed bat, in my office somewhere by
Mm-hmm.
him. But I remember in 2014 against the Giants, him hitting this home run to like the second deck of the stadium. We lost the game, but it just was like, yeah, this dude, he's different. He's different.
You play with Strasburg also, Steven Strasburg, and when I think
Yeah.
when you play with him, you may have to correct me when I'm wrong. When you played him, he was at the top of his game and like one of the top pitchers in the league.
Yes.
Was he always looked like he was just a super serious dude. I don't know him at all,
Yeah,
right? But his demeanor looked like he was super
yeah,
locked in all the time.
yeah,
Was he
yeah.
like that off the field also?
He was, off the field. No, he was a little bit more friendlier, soft spoken. But when it was time for him to pitch, he was in kill mode for sure.
Yeah,
And the
yeah.
reason why I know that was the year after I left the Nationals and I was a
Mm-hmm.
Giants player. I remember facing him and I was taking a little bit of time to get in the box so he can pitch, and he was looking at me like, I'm like, man, in my mind, I'm like, I just played with you last year. You my boy. What's up? He looked at me like, bitch, like, get in the box. Like, let's go. And I was like, oh, okay, this is what we on. Okay, this is what we on today. Okay. But, but I respect that though. Cause he like, look, man, I'm trying to, even though, I got respect for you. We're boys. But when he's on that mound, he's trying to kill you.
What about Brandon Crawford?
He wanted the smoothest white boys I ever played with. And I mean that
Yeah,
with all due respect. I mean that with all
yeah,
due respect, just as far as
yeah.
like athleticism and at the shortstop position, just how smooth his hands were, his exchange on double plays, just his accuracy with his throws, his range going left to right. Yeah, he definitely one of the best shortstops that I play with. And, I've been in center field, you get a bird's eye view of everything, and watching,
Mm-hmm.
his instincts and his reaction, as soon as that ball's hit, like, there's no wasted movements. Like
Right.
he's not a fast runner. He's not super athletic, but like, he just was blessed with the gift to play shortstop.
And lastly, but not least, say the best for last. Something near and dear to your heart is the Denard Span Foundation. Okay. What you've been doing for a number of years, but I want you to tell just the followers who don't know what it is, the cause, the objective, the mission. Just talk to us about the Denard Span Foundation.
Yeah, man, it's something that I started in the middle of my career, and I always knew that baseball and sports was going to take me far and take me places, but I never felt that was who I was, and that was going to be the definition of Denard Span, and so for me, I feel like God has put us all on this earth to help and to lift others up. And for me, once I got to a point in my career where I was established, I wanted to do something by giving back to and being able to relate to people that grew up, similar to how I grew up in a single mother household. And
Right.
while I was playing, it started off as, during the off season, during Thanksgiving and Christmas, we do, Thanksgiving dinners, Christmas dinners, and Christmas gifts for kids, and raising money to do stuff like that. And then as I retired, me and my wife and my family, we were, just like, man, like thinking to ourselves, on those days, Thanksgiving, Christmas, those are 1 day holidays, you know what I mean? And after that, people go back to, real life, I mean? It's nice what we're doing. But like, how can we make more of a lasting impact, in these families' lives? And, growing up in Tampa, being a Florida State fan and being a Tampa Bay Bucks fan, Warwick Dunn was, one of, my
Mm-hmm.
favorite athletes as a kid. And,
Mm-hmm.
just to see what he's done post playing career, and what he does in the space with Habitat for Humanity, helping
Mm-hmm.
families like, Deshaun Watson. He was a family that Warwick Dunn helped get into a home. But
Yep.
that was his niche. And so for me, that was the inspiration. I'm like, all right, like, what else is essential, for stability in a family? Obviously shelter is number one, but aside from that, reliable transportation
Right.
is a close second. You know what I
Right.
mean? And for like I said, providing stability for these families. And so since 2019, that has been like our niche, and that has been our biggest program is helping these single mothers that don't have transportation, don't have reliable transportation, get it, so that they, can go to work. Like, you know what I mean? Like, a lot of these jobs that they have, they
Mm-hmm.
don't have, bosses that give them grace. And so it's
Mm-hmm.
important for them to, be able to know how they're going to get to work day in and day out. And then, of course, with their kids, like I think about when I was a jit or a kid, all the practices and all the activities that me and Ray was involved in. When my mom's car was in the shop, like it was like hell trying to, figure out how we were going to get there.
Right.
Thankfully we had, family and friends, that helped us. But, so just trying to, give, these single parent families and their kids, just hope and, just the sense of, just because your cards aren't, dealt the best, but you still can make something of yourself, and you are thought about, and you are loved.
My man, Denard Spider-Man Span.
Yes, sir. P Rock.
Yes.
P Rock. Man, I
Until
still ain't
next
forgave
time.
you. I used to jam us up on that line, man. I still ain't appreciate that,
Hey,
bro.
look, Span, look, hey. I had a little razzle dazzle back in my day. You
You
know what I
did,
mean?
man.
You
You
know
did.
what's
We all
crazy?
looked up to you.
You know what's crazy is that hopefully you don't go through this with your kids. But my son, my firstborn, my heart, he don't give two craps about how good I say I was or other people say I was back in the day. He don't care anything about it, bro. If I he don't care nothing about it, man. He don't
You
want to
don't have
watch
no
no
old.
film,
I was about to say you don't have no old film.
bro. I got it all. I got
He
it
don't.
all.
He don't respect it.
Now he ain't trying to watch it. He don't care. Now my daughter, she'll dabble in it. She'll watch a little bit of film. That's gonna motivate her. My son don't really
Yeah,
give two craps. You know what I mean? You want your firstborn to be like, I want to be like dad. I want to be like my
that's
daddy.
it.
Man, my son don't care.
That hurt, don't it?
Man, already, man. But he's good at what he does, man. He's
Yeah,
even killed.
yeah,
He's really good at what he does.
yeah,
He's like his mother, just naturally talented. Me and my
yeah,
daughter are probably more alike because we worked really hard. My
yeah.
wife was very good on that track. My son
Naturally
is
gifted.
just that's God gift ability. My son is the same way. That ball just spins off his hands, man. He's such a pretty player, man.
That's what's up.
So but anyways, we're gonna catch up. Let's try and link up this weekend,
Yes,
man.
sir. Yes, sir.
All right,
Let's do it.
my man.
All right.